You are listening to Been There, Done That. We present some of the smartest people connected to the business of coffee. People who've succeeded in the tough grind of hospitality by staying ahead of the rest. So join us as we explore the secrets to their success and help you accelerate your business. This show is brought to you by the Coffee Commune, where the coffee community comes to collaborate. Enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Phil DeBella, and we've got another episode of Been There and Done That, where we are celebrating amazing people that have been there and done that. And in this series, we're catching up with people that have got great stories in hospitality, that have been in hospitality for a long time, have so much wisdom, have gone through the ups and downs, but they're all about showcasing success stories. And today I have with me Matt Jefferis. Matt, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Matt, it's an honour. Obviously, I know a lot about you. How old are you now?
41.
41. And when did we meet? When you were 18?
18, 19.
There we go.
First met.
So it's been a long time. And Matt, can I say, is a hospitality professional. So he's only 41, but he's been in the industry for a long, long time. I'm not going to tell you his story. Well, I'm going to extrapolate the story out of him. We're going to share it with the listeners, and we're going to inspire the next generation to come through to see what hospitality can be, should be, if you've got the right attitude, the right skills, and the right people around you. So this is all about you, Matt, and celebrating yourself. Obviously, you are one of two. Mm-hmm. Your brother Dan, twin brother, yep, came into the businesses together. But let you tell your story. So currently, Matt and Dan both own Savour Café and Franc at Murtha Village here in Brisbane, New Farm. Two amazing businesses. But Matt, give us a short version of your story, and then we'll talk about the ups and downs and the stuff you love and what's next.
Okay.
But where did it all start for you?
So, Dan and I are originally from Cairns, far north Queensland. So we moved to Brisbane in 2022. And the first cafe that we worked at in Brisbane was called City Cosmopolitan. And we met Louisa.
2002, not 2022.
2002.
There you go.
2002. Yeah. And we met Louisa, your sister-in-law. And that was my first job there. There was a dishwashing job going there at the time. So I went in there and applied for that and got it. And Louisa and Kelly, her business partner, said, look, we do have another dishwashing job available. Do you know anyone? So I was like, yeah, well, my brother's actually looking for work as well. So he came and worked at City Cosmopolitan. And then from there, we went
dishwasher?
As a dishwasher as well.
Can I tell you
we both started as dishwashers.
Everyone that's been on the show sharing their success story so far all started as dishwashers.
Which is fantastic because you get to see it right from the bottom. So we started there, and then we both went to another cafe called Felici, which is where we really sort of started to meet you and Jana, because I believe it was one of your first cafes that you were supplying.
Correct, supplied from
with DeBella Coffee. And then, I went to IC Bar. Dan went to another cafe called Sugar Bar, and we did our own thing. But we both worked right the way through the businesses. So from doing food, coffee, managing, and we fell in love with the industry, and we knew that it was what we wanted to do. So we were always talking about, we want to own our own cafe. And you were coming into the cafe quite a lot. And I remember saying to you, if there's any opportunities that come available, just let us know. We'll go have a look. And we did have a look at a couple. And then one day you just said to Dan and I, look, why don't you come into View for dinner? And you just opened View for maybe, 5 or so months. And we went along, and fortunately for us, you said to us, why don't you boys come into business with us at View? Which gave us a foot in the door, because we obviously knew how to manage cafes. We had no experience running a business.
So let's pause there, because there's so much more to unpack, right? But let's go back to, so what did you love about the industry?
So just the customer aspect, really fell in love with coffee itself, just learning everything about coffee. And I think at that time, the cafe scene was really coming about in Brisbane. But I love coming down to the roasting factory here with you, seeing you roast, even the way that the businesses were run, because I'd worked at cafes in Cairns, I worked at a pub in England, but just seeing the way that the businesses were run, we really liked that. And then even the social aspect with the staff and
because you're in CBD cafes, like you're in the city.
Exactly right. This is
Monday to Friday. Yep. They were fast paced. Lots of and this is back in the 2000s, guys. People listening to this, early 2000s. It wasn't what it is today, right? Then we'll unpack that as well, because you're still in the business.
Yep.
But this is back in the heyday, I call it, when there's not many good people operating, and you were working with good people that knew their stuff, and obviously fast tracked your learning. But customer base was fast, furious. You learned speed. What were the key things that you learned at that time?
Really making sure that the customer experience, making sure that the coffees are going out quickly, making sure that there's that atmosphere in the cafe. And that was great with the city cafes because, as you said, like when people all came in, everyone came in at once. It was buzzing. It was a lot of people around, but making sure that, things were efficient going out. Attention to detail, making sure, all the tables are always cleared, anything like that. But mainly coming down to making sure that the customer was happy and they were getting what they needed. In the city especially, you need to get that coffee out because they don't have that much time. They need to come in, get their coffee and then go straight away. So making sure that speed was a big thing as well.
Isn't it amazing? Fast forward 22 years later and they're all the things that are relevant now that a lot of people get wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Tell me, what did you learn that people got wrong back then? So what was some of the stuff that stands out 22 years ago in your mind that people, that things were getting wrong? So you're sitting there, you've learned, you're in the industry, you got your opportunity, you're learning all this stuff, you're learning all the good things.
Yeah.
But what were you seeing that wasn't working that you're going, hey, if I had my own place, I'm going to do it differently?
Well, I mean, so around this time, the first business book that I read, and this was the E-Myth Experience.
Yeah, Richard Gerber.
Yeah, exactly right. So that really that showed me the way of running a business that I hadn't really thought about before. And that really, and myself and my brother both read that book and it really changed the way that we thought about business. So I think even around that time, we were saying, okay, if we ever did our own thing, we would love to have the business as the product. So like systemizing and having all the processes for the business. So eventually, if you did want to sell the business, even if you didn't, you had something there it was like the product itself, which was the business. So I think even working in cafes, which say up in Far North Queensland, it was highly stressful for the staff because things weren't organised. You didn't know what was going on. If you got really busy, you had to just go on the fly. But we always thought if you had a really organised business, everyone knew exactly what they were doing. That was the style of business that we wanted to have. And then I guess having the experience of working all the way through from dishwasher in the kitchen, we knew each area so that eventually when it came to running our own business, we could implement those things.
And what a celebration, because a lot of things what happen, and one of the things I love about the Been There, Done There podcast is exactly that. People have been there and done that. And this series is all about showcasing and also an opportunity for you as an owner to pause and go, look at what I've done, because you're still young, right? There's people older than you coming into the industry now, but you guys were doing this 22 years ago, and that's what I find really remarkable is that you and your brother were both sitting there 20 odd years ago going, right, I'm going to learn every element of this business. I'm going to treat it as a future. And more importantly, I see the opportunity to be able to systemize it and generate a business here that is a business, not just a cafe, not just a lifestyle. A lot of people were building cafes for lifestyles.
True.
You, at a very young age, with your brother, were going, hey, we're going to turn this into a business. And it's important because where I'm going with this, listeners, is it's all about setting foundations. And people will hear me say it often, you don't start at level 10 of a building because everything will fall down. You guys set your foundations washing dishes, you set your foundations working for other people. You were looking at it, you were reading books, you still do. I know you and your brother are both avid readers and learners. You love talking to industry professionals, you surround yourself with good people, you come from a good family. So the foundations were strong, foundations were there. And that is why we'll now get back to stage 2 where I paused you. Myself and Jana and Louisa saw an opportunity. You said, we started View Lounge.
That's right.
In 2004, and what started as an idea of two sisters wanting to own a business turned into a monster very quickly.
That's right.
And as the girl said, they start a monster, you got to feed the monster. And this business quickly outgrew just their capability. And shouldering that, I was obviously building DeBella Coffee and it was going gangbusters.
Exactly.
And the solution we saw is we saw two hardworking young boys that were capable, that had worked their way in the industry, that talked a lot of sense, and more importantly, were very driven and respectful. And so what we saw in you and your brother was an opportunity to take you to the next level. And that's enough of me. Now I'll hand over to you. So now talk us through that you've been made an offer to join View Lounge.
Exactly right. So we had that dinner with you. You made us the offer. We obviously thought it was a great opportunity for us because it gave us the opportunity to go into business with people that had done it before. So you had you've been in the industry for a long period of time, so did Louise and Jana. So we were able to have this opportunity to learn. It was kind of like our university. So we knew how to manage cafes, but it was actually the business side of things as well, which really we were able to learn off you over the next however many years that we were in business.
But let's for the listeners, the boys didn't just learn from us. The boys came in with skills we needed.
Yes.
And that was why it worked well, because we'll unpack the why partnerships work.
Yeah.
We're not in partners anymore, and you're not partnered, but we've certainly got a strong friendship. So we'll touch on that and what makes partnerships work. But
and I think that's important, having good business partners.
Correct. But you guys came to the table with a set of skills.
Yeah.
And, Dan was very, very exceptional in the kitchen. Matt was very, very brilliant and professional out the front. They both were good at implementing systems. So they were bringing something to the table. We didn't just go pluck two young fellas out and say, hey, we want you part of this business. For anyone out there thinking of bringing on partners, we brought on partners that were bringing something to the table and we were bringing something to the table for them.
Exactly.
So what happened next from your perspective?
So then we just utilised that time to learn as much as possible. And as you said, like that was an opportunity for Dan and I to obviously try and learn outside of working in the business as well. Like we were constantly learning. So reading business books, reading leadership books, reading management books, because I think the most important thing aside from the systems is actually knowing how to deal with staff, how to deal with customers, how to deal with, a thing that I probably had trouble with to start off with is obviously when you're going to business, you want to make sure everything's perfect, and it can tend to, I found with myself, probably micromanage a little bit too much, which isn't a good long-term solution because staff don't like being micromanaged. So I was reading a lot of books on how to manage staff properly and leadership, and it actually helped a lot to take a step back and let the staff you have everything there that they can rely on in terms of systems, but they need to go through the experiences themselves so they can learn from them, and then they can deal with situations without you having to be there all the time. So,
and that takes a lot of patience. And I have to say, one of the things, that your superhero power, you and your brother, is your patience and your level-headedness. Yeah. I've never seen you lose your shit, and I've known you for over 20 years. I've never seen Dan lose his shit. Always calm, always level-headed, and that's not a normal thing in hospitality. Certainly not for a Sicilian sitting opposite you. Yeah. We're not always level-headed. You've seen me lose my shit many times, but it works
for you.
Yeah, it does. Everyone's got a different style. But talk us through that. Talk us through, that learning and leading, the way you lead people around.
Yeah. So, for now, it's really, especially with the management team, because the managers need to manage the other staff. So it's giving them the opportunity to, like I said, like learn from their experiences. Like you're sort of there, like watching them and guiding them, asking the right questions. How could you deal with that situation better in the future? But these days, like my brother and I don't have to be there all the time because we have people that we can rely on.
But you've done the work.
Business, but we've done the work. But originally, like if I was there and I was just constantly around, and you kind of tie yourself to the business. But if you're going to be in the cafe industry for 20 plus years, you need to make sure that, you can step away from the business and the business runs itself and you have the right team on there. So I think having the right team is a big thing because you need to hire the right people, because there's no point in having great systems if people aren't going to follow them. But having the right team, so hiring people that want to be in the customer service industry, they're not just doing it because they need money because they're going to uni, but they actually enjoy serving people, interacting with people. So our staff, they get along well with each other. We've always been complimented on our teams that we've had. We've had many teams over the past 20 years.
And you get a lot of people staying for a long time.
And we have long-term staff. So... And it's important that they all get along well together as well. And
you start to see a theme there, right? So clear vision, for the listeners, clear vision, a dedication to serving customer, and then empowering your team, communicating with your team. You said a couple of really key things there where you're asking them questions and coaching them.
That's right.
You're spending time to make sure that they're bonding with each other and that they're in a happy place. So there is a theme, there is a system, and there is a process, as you guys are strong in. Tell us some of the bad eggs. How have you dealt with the bad eggs?
Well, I think you need to try and deal with them as soon as possible, because I think if you get someone that doesn't fit with the team, it can affect the good staff members. So that was one thing that we learnt pretty quickly. Like if you let things go on too long, you start losing good staff members because they're like, well, why is this person sticking around? So I think trying to deal with that as soon as possible. But again, going through the process of, even if you have a set structure of like giving them a warning, giving them a verbal warning, making sure they know exactly what they're doing wrong, what the expectations are from you as the owner of the business. And if they can't meet those expectations or they keep doing the same thing, then, making sure that things are redirected or whatever. But I think making sure that those type of situations are dealt with fairly quickly, because you don't want that affecting the rest of the team, for sure.
And of course, having that level head. I mean, and again, if you follow that process of a strong vision, being customer focused, I want to deliver the best for the customer. I want a great team. And you're explaining that to the bad eggs. They either step up or step out, right?
Exactly right.
You create that environment where they self-choose.
And that's important with the training. Like any training process that you're going through, as long as the staff are getting exactly the same training, everyone that comes through is doing the same training, you know exactly what they've done. So they know exactly what your expectations are as an owner and what's expected of them as an employee as well.
So you're in partnership, and then it's time to take off the well, they weren't training wheels, but it was time to go solo with your brother. And what was going through your mind at that stage? Because it was time for the girls to obviously exit completely. They've had their babies.
Yeah, that's right.
They said, you boys are killing it. You know, there's nothing. And for listeners to understand there, and I've always called it the perfect partnership, and that is because the boys came in offering something on the table. We wanted them there because we were offering something for them, but they offered something back. So there was a mutual need for each other. Because I want to unpack the concept of, do I bring on a partner? Do I not bring a partner? So step one was there was a validation and a need for both. And I call that expertise and experience, convenience. So you brought convenience and you guys bought expertise. Now, the expertise was obviously the systems, the drive, the youth, your brother in the kitchen, you out the front.
That's right.
The convenience was that both my wife and my sister-in-law, it was time to start thinking about babies. And our firstborns were born in 2008.
Yes.
Annika was born 2008. Huxley was born 2008. So it ticked those boxes. Now, the third one is money. Now, it's important to extrapolate this. If you've got people that are so damn good that they've got the experience you need and they're going to give you the convenience you need, you make the money happen. Now, whether it's they bring the money to the table or you self-fund. Now, in our case, we obviously self-funded your first lot to come into the business, and you guys obviously secured that against your shares and stuff like that. But the point for the listeners is you make it happen. Right? You need three things to make a partnership work. You need experience. You need expertise, you need convenience, and you need them to be financially invested. But the way they're financially invested, you can happen in more ways than one. Because I have a lot of people say, well, what about if the partner doesn't have the money? Well, if they've got the other two, we'll be creative and work it out. Do they find an investor? Do you self-fund it for them? How does it happen? Because look at what you guys have been able to create. So we fast forward, you exit, because the partnership time was that the girls couldn't add any more experience, so to speak, to you. And they certainly couldn't add the convenience, because after the first baby came the second baby, not too far later. So it was time for Matt and Dan to take the business that they deserved and to go outright on your own. What was going through your head at the time?
Well, I mean, that was obviously a big opportunity for us as well. So, at that time, we came into the business and we had that small share of the business when we first got in there. And then each time we came to a new lease, we wanted to buy more and more. And obviously being so young, we didn't have always the capital behind us. So that's where it really was important for us, because we came in and we kind of did like a vendor finance kind of thing, where we were just buying more and more of the business as we went along, and then eventually having 100% of the business. So for us, it was a great opportunity, and we just wanted to do as well as we could in that business. And we had aspirations to other businesses as well, but that gave us a good footing to do other
platform,
businesses.
Right?
Exactly right.
And also gave you that the what I call the resume that you needed for other landlords to back you and stuff like that.
Because that's important. If you're going out by yourself, they need to know that you've got experience running businesses and they can see what you've done in the past as well.
And it's great. And I have to say, your work ethic, and your brother's work ethic, phenomenal. You earned your opportunities, you earned your success. Again, it's a great time to pause and reflect back on that, because the years go by pretty quickly, don't they? And you don't sit there and smell the roses, so to speak, and go, well, hey, look at what we did and what we achieved, because you guys made that happen. No one gives you anything in life, right? You earn it.
Exactly right.
And then they might help you and they might give you a hand up. But, and I always say, we certainly didn't give you a hand out. We gave gave you a hand up, not a handout, and you weren't that hand up. And that's the way a transaction should work with people.
Definitely.
You know, it should
It needs to be beneficial for both parties.
100%.
Sure.
You add value to them, they add value to you. I've been involved in situations where it's a one-way street and they never end pretty because somebody always ends up doing the wrong thing by you. So now it's one of the things I've learned over the lessons is there's got to be a two-way street. It's got to be mutual benefits. Benefit for you, benefit for me. So you go out alone, you go on, and then you say, right, I want to open another one. So you ventured into another opportunity. And as we say, and no person's been on my show where every hit's been a winner. And that goes for me as well. We've all had our dogs, so to speak, and things have gone. So let's talk through the next phase. You open another site.
Yeah, so we opened a patisserie called Savour over at Chermside, and we learned a lot from that business.
One of those ideas, fair to say, the concept and the vision was good.
Yeah. I mean, the actual products themselves, like Dan was making, it was all French-inspired eclairs,
Amazing
macarons,
quality.
like the patisserie items were fantastic. I think one thing that we definitely learned from that position was the actual shop fit out as well. So we wanted the business to sell a lot of patisserie items, but also a lot of coffee. But I think our shop fit out was designed particularly for desserts. And so I think even for a perception from customers, they saw us as a dessert shop, and it did affect our coffee sales, I think, in the end. But we definitely learned from that. And when we did Savour and New Farm, when we did Frank, we made sure that the fit outs were different.
Well, you wouldn't be where you are today without the experience.
Exactly right, yeah. And then even any business when you first start, cash flow is difficult. So I think most people don't realise that you need to have more cash behind you to open up a business. You don't realise all the costs in there. And even, you've got bank loans, you've got, even before you open up, you've got to pay all the staff training, all the ingredients to come in, and then you start operating, and then you don't know how it's going to go either.
Yeah. And it's a great point because I always say a business should start from zero. Yet most people start a business from negative.
Yes.
And we've seen friends, we've seen colleagues, we've seen people go under. They've had the right concept, they've had the money, but they've blown all the money and started the business with a negative.
Exactly.
The business should always start on zero. And what I mean by that is all of its loans should be taken care of. Everything else should be able to be taken care of so that when you start trading, you can do your obligatory 25% cost of goods, 10% GST, 35% wages. But if you're starting with a negative, and you're highly leveraged, then that business, you need to allow an extra 10% just for repayments.
Exactly right.
And that's a lesson that you obviously learned. A lesson for listeners, especially the aspiring people. When you start, I always say a 50-50. If you do a $400,000 fit out, then you need to have $200K behind you in the bank.
That sounds right.
So 50% of whatever you're spending to build that business, you need to have in working capital is a good model for the listeners to think about. And I can tell you through 35 years of experience now in business, in hospitality, anyone that's fallen over has fallen over. Most people fall over because they don't have that startup capital.
That's right. The cash flow,
the cash flow to start with.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that my brother and I did when cash flow is tight, we just used to work more. Like we try and save wages by working more in the business. But again, that's not a good long-term solution because then you're working 100 hours a week and you should be focusing on what the actual business, how to improve the business or make the business better.
And it becomes a spiral to the bottom. You get dragged in. It's like a vortex.
Exactly.
You get sucked into the business. You then stop working on the business and then it's just a run to the bottom and everyone starts saying, how can I, and the number one problem, the paper that we released last year through the Coffee Commune said, the number one problem is that we're in a world now that people need to get more customers because people are spending less. The strategy is now, how do I get more customers into my cafe because the disposable income spend is down and we therefore, to keep our revenue or increase it, need to bring more customers in. Pre-COVID, it wasn't that at all. Disposable income was high. It was, the strategy was, how do I get people to spend more in my cafe?
Exactly.
You learned from obviously Savour at Chermside. You learned many things. You learned about cash flow. You learned about store design. You learned about operating hours, of course, because you weren't all of a sudden you weren't in control being part of Westfield.
Exactly right.
And you decided to close that down.
Yes.
And I always say sometimes you take 2 steps back to go 5 steps forward. Now you took 2 steps back at the time.
Yep.
How did you deal with that? Because it's everything up until then had been successful.
Yes.
How did you have to deal with that on a personal front?
It was difficult because you obviously go into business thinking, you want everything to work out exactly like you hope, but it doesn't always end up that way. But the way that we looked at it was that we took what we learnt from that business and we tried to put it into Savour at New Farm. So when when we were in business, it was View Lounge.
Yeah.
We're in the same location. In 2020, we rebranded to Savour New Farm, but we wanted to combine View and Savour Patisserie together so that we could utilise the best parts of both businesses.
Which is smart.
Yeah.
So you use that failing there to actually supercharge and rebrand the business. But the key too is you didn't bet the house.
No.
You kept View in New Farm at the time.
Yep.
Then you shut down, obviously, Savour, took the learnings from it and the good parts, and you've now built, which is still to today, a beautiful business called Savour, which was the best of View, the revamped side of View, and the best of Savour.
Exactly right. So we were able to bring in some of the patisserie items from Savour Patisserie, and then we had our made to order breakfast, lunch, meals that we always had.
A redesign of the store the way you wanted.
Redesign, yeah. So I mean that was really important, and I know we might talk about this, but around that we actually finished those renovations just prior to COVID, and it was early March 2020, and we had relocated the coffee machine and bar area from the centre of the cafe where it used to be when it was View, and we'd put it out on the Merthyr Road side on the footpath and had a takeaway window there, and that was lucky for us because then we were going into lockdowns and we were still able to serve takeaway coffees, takeaway sandwiches from that takeaway window. So that really helped us. But then even generally, like just having that takeaway window there increased our takeaway coffee sales. It
takes the traffic out of the shop. You redesign the shop.
And we kind of did learn that from Savour Chermside as well, because we did have a takeaway window at Savour Chermside, even though we didn't have as many coffees sales as we hoped to. But it made us think, this would work really well at the new farm shop.
And again, for the listeners, sometimes you go 2 steps back go 5 steps forward. Yep. Or sometimes you've got to hit pause.
Yep.
And that's something that people need to realise as well, is that there's a synergy here. But all the guests that have been on the show that are sharing their success stories, they've either gone 2 steps back to go 5 steps forward, or they've had to learn to hit pause so that they could regroup and grow.
Exactly.
I always say if it's easy today, it often becomes difficult tomorrow. If it's a bit harder today, you're learning so that it becomes easier tomorrow.
Exactly right.
So then, so Savour's up and running, doing amazing things, obviously battling. What did you learn through COVID?
Well, COVID, it was obviously a difficult period because everything was shut down. Like I said, we were lucky to at least be able to serve some products. Half of our staff obviously went on the JobKeeper, and then we had half our staff still working, but we wanted to bring everyone back once we were back running in full mode again. But yeah, again, it was really especially even after that sort of COVID period, the costs of everything went up. Yeah. The rise in prices of utilities, of ingredients from our suppliers, wages, they all went up. So, around that time, we were really trying to even focus more on how to streamline the business, how to reduce costs for us in our expenses so that we didn't have to put our menu prices as much. And obviously we had to put prices up because I think it got to a certain point and I think a lot of cafe owners, they try and absorb a lot of those costs, but we did end up increasing our prices across the board, which helped us. And we also tried to communicate as well as we could with our customers well in advance. And I think that also helped. It made it an easier transition as well.
Yeah, good point. And that's a tribute to you and your brother. You've always been customer focused.
Yeah.
And having that relationship with customers. And I remember when you implemented, your credit card fees, you talked to the customers first and said, hey, we need to do this. And for the listeners, they've heard me bang on about this. The industry was motoring. The industry was doing great. People were doing really, really well. And when I say really well, no one was ripping anybody off. They were getting the return. They were passing on good prices to the customer. Yeah. Coffees were $4 a cup, and you could get bacon and eggs for $14.
Exactly. Right.
Which was well priced. But then you've got this. Everything goes up at the same time. And for the listeners, a reminder, and as I've said, everything's gone up by, say, 30, 40%, and the cafe owners absorbed about 20 or 25% of it. They get to a stage they need to put that price up, And most people haven't put their price up more than 10 or 15%.
Exactly.
But yet their expenses have gone up to about 40, 50% now. Labour's certainly gone up 30%. Electricity's gone up 40% in the last 12 months.
That's right.
And we, obviously the coffee commune does a lot of advocacy work and a lot of education for the public and the industry for people to understand that, everything's gone up all at once. But Matt's point there is that it was structured, it was streamlined. So key takeaways, he communicated to the customers. They looked at their back end, how they could streamline and make sure that they could have, didn't have to pass everything on to the customer,
exactly right.
Forward facing. So obviously a lot of learnings, a lot of respect. Tell us a bit about your demographic, because you've got a very unique demographic there in New Farm in terms of the customer.
Yeah, I mean, we've got we got a lot of regular customers, so we see a lot of the same faces day in, day out over the last 20 years. So a lot of we have a lot of retirees in the New Farm area, which we get to see during the week. And then we have like young families that come through on the weekends as well. But yeah, we have a lot of regular customers. And that's important because our staff get to know the customers. They form relationships with the customers. We've had a lot of customers that actually form relationships with other customers in the cafe as
It's a real
well.
community place,
It is
right?
a community place.
And the whole village there at Method Village is obviously
the
community.
village is like that.
And you guys have worked into that brand. You've built a brand within the brand. But the constant thing here, and the point too, is that you've constantly worked your business. You and Dan are constantly working on what's next.
That's
so
right.
talk us through that. How far ahead do you guys try and plan? What goes through your head when you're doing menu designs? Because you're always refreshing and updating.
So menu design, we always make sure, around COVID as well, we tried to reduce the menu size because we wanted to make sure we streamlined that, made sure that the prep there wasn't like too much prep for the kitchen staff. We tried to reuse ingredients in multiple menu items. But we also, one thing that we actually had been looking into prior to COVID, but COVID actually pushed a lot of this forward, was technology in business. So we were looking at things like the Eversys coffee machine, which we have implemented at Savour and Franc, but there was no one using that machine at the time.
It was a big gamble, right?
It was. So we because of the system sort of focus, we saw that coffee machine with this would work really well in terms of that system operation and processes. But we did, the company that we went through, we did a lot of trials with them. We made sure we went across, we put our beans through the machine before putting it into
It was very
Savour.
measured, very structured.
Exactly right. So we made sure that, and the coffee that we put through tastes exactly the same as what our baristas were making us on a traditional machine. So we were confident with the coffee machine itself, but because we were the first in Australia to have it, it was sort of taking the step into the unknown as well. But that was about consistency. That was about getting the coffee out as quickly as possible to the customers.
But without changing the customer experience.
Exactly. So the customer didn't even notice the difference. The look of the machine is like a traditional looking machine, but we could also reduce training time so we can multi-skill our servers. They can come and learn pouring coffee or making coffee a lot quicker than we could do on a traditional machine. And it was
you didn't
also
have to pass the extra cost on to the customer.
And that was a way that we didn't have to increase our prices as much as we would have needed to, because we were able to reduce our expenses. And another thing was, there's lots of AI apps out at the moment. So we use one called Restoke at the moment. But the reason that we went with that was because all the invoices that we get from our suppliers is emailed through to this app, and it reads them. And as all of our recipes are on the back end, so we have all of our drink and food recipes measured out and portioned out and costed. So if there's a change in the supplier price, it picks up on it straight away. Yeah. And then we'll have, so say if our food costs are at 30% and our menu item goes above 30%, we'll get a text message saying this menu item in particular is now 31% because this price has gone up. So it gets us to react a lot quicker instead of manually looking through all of those invoices and then going back through all your recipes, which those
or worse, looking at your bank account saying why are we not making ends meet. And Restoke's a great partner. So they're a great partner here at Coffee Commune.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're an amazing business to help you.
Yeah.
But you have a willing, it all stems from the mindset that you guys are constantly working your business.
And looking for what's new.
And looking for what's new, getting involved in what's new, researching and working your business.
Exactly.
If you are working in your business and not on your business, you will not make it through the next 3 years.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen.
Because you're so focused on, you don't see what's coming out. You can't see what's going wrong with the business because you're just focused too much on inside the business.
And if you do that hard work,
yep.
Let's fast forward now, right? You've opened a second shop called Franc.
Yes.
Doing great. Obviously, it fits in with the model.
Yep.
It was a flow through of what you guys wanted to do. So tell us a little bit about Franc. And then what I want you to touch on is the lifestyle you have now because of all the work you've done in the rear vision mirror. So talk us through the concept of Franc.
So Franc is French-inspired sort of grab-and-go cafe. So we have our cabinet food there, we have our baguettes, we have the patisserie items, but we utilise the kitchen at Savour for our chefs to make the products at Savour. Franc is probably 20 metres from Savour itself. So it's, I mean, for us, I mean, that was one thing with our business at Chermside was the travelling back and forth all the time. So having a business which is in the same shopping village is very good for us.
A very clever model.
Exactly. So then, I mean, but they look completely different names, different concepts. So we can try and provide two different styles of businesses. So we don't have to, so we're not fighting over the same customers as well. So we have different coffee blends that we serve. But yeah, we do utilise our bigger kitchen at Savour because we were trying to sell as much as we could through a smaller space. And we did learn that from Savour at Chermside as well. It was very specialised. So you had to want to go and get those particular eclairs.
Yeah. Became a destination place.
Exactly right. Whereas Franc, like we can sell multiple products. So there can be, all your sandwiches, your sweets and everything. But we don't have a big footprint there, but we have the access to our kitchen, which is just down the road.
Keeps your costs down and you pass it on.
Right.
So you become known for great value, which it is, great products, and you mitigated it all, again, through structure, through a clear vision, through clever structure and strategies. I can't say this enough, and I admire the way that you and your brother have always worked the business, because the common denominator with a lot of people that are doing bad in the industry is they don't know the numbers, they don't work their business. Yep. And I understand why, because a lot of them have been sucked into that vortex. They've had to get in there and work. One of the reasons the commune exists is to fast track people's, introductions, accelerations, education.
Yep.
That's what, why we're getting so much traction, because we do that. Because you and your brother are very active in looking for it. A lot of people are not. So they can come to us and be put onto Restoke and all these, the podcast, listening to your story.
Exactly.
Hopefully it sparks up some people listening going, hey, am I doing that, or I should be doing that, or the rest of it. So if you do that, this is your why. Matt, we recently went to the wedding of your brother, which is fantastic. Yeah. You guys have been able to, in the last, 18 months, say, travel overseas, have holidays. You're getting married in the new year. Yep. A lot of people in hospitality aren't in that position. They're whinging, they're whining. Obviously, the listeners, there's a whole heap of work that's gotten you to where you are.
Exactly.
So talk us through your lifestyle now, and so that people understand it's not showboating, so that people understand that if you do the work, the results come.
So, I mean, Dan and I go into work because we want to now. Like we go to the cafes and we're going to Savour and Franc, but the lifestyle is completely different to what it was when we first started. So we go in there. We don't have a set time which we have to be there, but we can go in there whenever we want. But we both enjoy going in there. I'll go in there for a coffee with my fiancée in the mornings. We'll have a coffee before she goes off to work. Dan comes in with his wife as well, and then we have the ability to come and go from the business whenever we want. So we go in there because we enjoy being in there. We enjoy interacting with the staff, interacting with the customers, but we're not tied to the business there, so we can leave when we want to. Obviously, we're there as a backup just in case, there's multiple people away or whatever, but we're always there. But yeah, we're definitely not tied to the business, and it gives us opportunity. Like you said, I went on a holiday this year, which was fantastic, away for 4 weeks. Still have Dan that's around both businesses, but he can be there as well. And then he's away on his honeymoon.
But you still do the planning. So talk us through.
Still do the planning,
the strategy.
Exactly right. So we have meetings with our managers every week. So that's important because you need to, we're in there so we can see what's going on every day. We're getting feedback constantly from the managers. They have a lot of responsibility themselves to make sure the businesses are running the way that we'd like them. But that's their role. They need to make sure that the businesses are running properly. If they're not, they're the ones that we go to, and we have meetings with them. We say, this is where you need to improve, or whatever like that. But but definitely, we are there. We're constantly seeing what's going on, but we can. It's more about meetings with managers now, watching the financials,
vision and strategy.
Exactly right, because they're the things where are we going to go? What kind of menus are we going to have in the future? Looking for new things like technology, like we spoke about, but what's coming out next. And then constantly learning. We are a lot better on the business side of things now because we've given ourselves the opportunity to give time to learn, and even in doing other things like with investing and stuff like that as well.
Now that's at 41. But this all started at 16, 17,
Exactly right.
18,
Yeah.
and people are going to understand. Now you might be at level 15 now, but you put a lot of years into foundations and then a lot of years into building, and you're still working hard, but you're working different type of hard.
It's different type of hard. So it's more about thinking and thinking things through and seeing where we're going to go.
So tell me,
physical work.
What's next?
Next,
Apart from getting married?
Yeah,
what's
getting
next?
married. Well, I mean, one thing, like what Dan and I were saying, if we were going to do any other businesses, we would like to focus. There was, when I was overseas recently, went to London, and there was this business called Blank Street, which I thought was a great concept. Smaller footprint, but they use a similar type of machine. Well, they use the same type of machine as we use at Savour. So, but that really, because the small footprint and in high foot traffic areas, but you have obviously less overheads.
Deliver high quality at a value price.
Exactly right, and you can get the coffees out nice and quickly. Have the patisserie items there as well. So that sort of sparked a bit of interest there. So
there's a few strategies you could run around that.
Exactly
half
right.
owner operator, half half by you guys. You know.
Well, Dan and I have always said we'd love to give the same opportunity to someone else, like someone that came through. If it was one of our managers or someone that's been working for us for a while, that had a similar kind of they want to put in the hard work, and they want to be in hospitality as a career.
The next generation.
Exactly right. And being able to pass it on to some, because it does give them a foot in the door, which is important, because then they can just go ahead and take it where they want to as well. But
no, I see a model there.
Pass it on. Yeah.
I like the Blank Street model, and I see a model there with bringing in, say, a 49% owner and
exactly right.
and doing very similar to what you guys did, and giving that opportunity through and delivering value. That's the future. You know, you guys are still doing well because you deliver exceptional value.
Yep.
You know, you can get amazing food for the right price. There's a lot of places now charging $35.
Yeah.
For Eggs Benedict, you guys are still in the 20s.
Exactly right.
And do it exceptionally well. So, there is still a market for value, but in order to deliver value, you've got to do the streamlining of everything that you guys have done, in terms of embracing technology, learning, being customer focused, streamlining the back end. So like I said,
and knowing your financials as well.
Know your numbers.
Knowing the numbers, like knowing the percentages, making sure. And that's another thing, the management, obviously our management meetings, they have targets that they have to hit, like food costs, drinks costs, wages. They're things that's their job. They need to make sure. So if they're not, they're the things that we're also looking at.
Yeah.
So if they're above their wage percentage, then that's when we're having meetings with them and saying, okay, what's going on? How can we improve this? But yeah, that's
great.
the role.
So some of the key takeaways for listeners, the next generation. So if we were talking right now, if the audience was, you're delivering a speech to, say, grade 10, 11 and 12, what would you be telling them about the world of business?
Business, so I think learn as much as you can. You've got to constantly learn. So if it's specifically for cafes, it would be learning everything about the cafe operational side, but then learning everything you can about business and running a business, because there's a big difference from managing a business and a cafe to owning a business as well. So I think constantly learning. There's so many resources these days. Even if you don't go to university, there's so many books. There's courses online. There's YouTube courses, and you have access to so much information out there. But it's really important that you know how to run a business. If you're going to go into business, you need to know the financials. You need to know the important things about running a business.
And you still love hospitality?
Still love hospitality.
So what do you think trends are coming? What future trends do you think are coming?
Well, I definitely feel like technology is going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. Even things like, there's the business models with subscriptions and stuff like that, which would be interesting to see how that pans out with customers. But I think the main thing, it's always going to be customer focused. So even like we use QR codes, but we have counter service available as well, because you need to make sure that there's still that customer aspect. And even though this technology frees up our staff to give them more time to interact with customers, which is great, I think there needs to be a balance there as well, where there's an option for people to choose the style of service that they'd like.
You've got to build and you've heard me talk about this for years. You've got to build it from the outside in.
Exactly. You've got to think about what the customer wants.
It's not what you want. Get your ego, get out of the way.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. You've heard me say it about coffee, about product. When I used to help you guys in the cafe, it's not what we want. It's what the customer wants.
Exactly right.
It's got to sit within our values. It's got to sit within our vision, but it's not what we want, because we're not paying for the product.
Exactly right. And if you want them to keep coming back, then they're the ones that need to enjoy it. So
No, well, I tell you, it's you guys have been amazing students, amazing professionals now, and it's your turn to become the teachers. I really think you're onto something there. What's next is to take that experience, take your journey, both you and your brother, and commercialise it in terms of with the next generation. What opportunities can you provide to the next generation that you guys got, and make them, count, and at the same time, it gives you the great validation and the rest of it. Tell me, last question, how's it working with family?
Well, luckily for us, it's really good. Dan's my twin brother, so we have pretty much all of our outlooks on life are exactly the same. So that has been very helpful, because being in business with someone is obviously you need to make sure that works well. But having him as a business partner has been fantastic. And it works well because he runs the kitchen side of things.
He's got a different set of skills.
Exactly right. So he's got a different set of skills, and that was worked out right from the start, because it's important that I think that if you're going to be in business with someone else, that you know what type of things you're going to be looking after, because then you're not constantly arguing with each other as well. But no, great business partner, and look forward to doing many more things as well.
And park your ego, because I've noticed
exactly right.
Observing you both for the last 20 odd years, you don't have an ego, and you don't do business egotistically, and you don't do business emotionally.
Yep.
And regardless if you're going to partnership with your brother or somebody else, for the listeners, that's an important thing. I mean, I was in partnership with my sister-in-law because she was in partnership with my wife, obviously, and it worked because you parked the ego, you parked the emotion.
Exactly.
Everyone was driven by the same outcome, and that is what's in the best interest of the business and what's in the best interest of the customer.
And you're always going to have when you're going into it, you're always going to have people that doubt your abilities.
All the time.
All the time. So,
as I know.
Exactly. So I think it's making sure that if you have a real desire to do it, then you just go for it. Back yourself and prove them wrong.
Yep. And isn't it a good feeling?
It is.
You can sit there and go, you know what? You thought I couldn't make it, or you wanted me to scrub floors with toothbrushes or whatever the idiosyncrasies are.
Exactly.
And then you go, well, hang on, let's look at this. And that's one of the reasons we love and we want to do this series of podcasts, having yourself on the show and other people like you, Simon Gloftus, is really important in showcasing, because everyone's got a story. And isn't it funny that in hospitality, most people started as dishwashers, as I did. Started as dishwasher at 14 years old. So, mate, congratulations to you. Congratulations to your brother on an amazing journey.
Thank you.
We appreciate you sharing a story and hopefully inspiring that next generation. But it's also a good keepsake for your future, for your kids, for your staff to hear, because a lot of people see where you are today, but they don't know what happened yesterday to get there. And that would be a lot of your team. That would be some of your customers. You remember customers just come in and go, oh, Phil's changed his car. Or, Phil's doing 120 hours a week and suffering panic attacks and in the business till 11:30 at night. But it doesn't matter, and they don't need to. But, one of the things we love about these recordings, and the podcast series is that you get a copy of it, share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your staff. And really, it's a celebration of you. It's a celebration of what you've done and your brother from start to now. And it's also a possibility of what could be next.
Exactly right.
To inspire this. So, Matt, congratulations and thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
To the listeners, some amazing stuff there as usual. We don't bring on no 2-minute noodles on this show. It's all people that have been there and done that. Today you've listened to Matt Jefferis and his brother Dan, who unfortunately couldn't be with us. He just got married. But Dan, obviously, and Matt, a dynamo duo. Savour Café and Franc, go and visit them. Merthyr Village here in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, doing amazing stuff. See what you've heard in action and see why these guys are amazing hospitality professionals. Till next time, you go and be the best you can be. This has been Phil DeBella, and you've been listening to another episode of Been There and Done That.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today. Keep listening for more episodes of Been There and Done That. The Coffee Commune is here to help accelerate your potential. We want you to be better tomorrow than today. Until next time, you've been listening to Phil DeBella. I'm the founder and managing director of the Coffee Commune, a place where the coffee community comes to collaborate.